Hello everybody, welcome to this episode of TurboShed, and in this one we are going to go through the entire project over the last 3 years, from buying this LS400 as an MOT failure through to what it is now, which is a 650 horsepower 1100 Newton meter drag and drift monster. As we talk our way through this in the order that we did it, we'll put the notes at the bottom here, and you can go and watch the full episodes if you're interested in those particular sections. Let's begin. December 2016, idly fishing about on the internet because we had nothing better to do, looking for a project, and we found this car at a dealer's, which was just over the bridge where the hobbits lived. And we spoke with the dealer and we did a deal. They'd taken this in as Part X, the MOT had run out, and we decided it would be really a good idea to go and hire a trailer, drive down there and pick it up.
After we dealt with the flat battery with the jump start cable and actually managed to get this thing running.
What are you doing, Leon?
Holding the bonnet of a Lexus.
Is that because the bonnet struts are broken? It's exactly what we thought it was. We've got some nice leather seats and nice all electrics, all that kind of stuff. We've got multicoloured wings. We've got some nasty aftermarket alloys. But we've got the badge.
We finally realised that we had a V8, and 900 quid later and a couple of hours of driving, and we got it home. And then we couldn't get off the trailer because the battery had gone flat already. And then when we finally did get it off the trailer, we dug a massive hole in the gravel.
Well, why not? That's what you do with the V8. Burnouts.
On gravel?
Our idea of buying this car originally was we wanted the engine as a donor. So we bought this for a different project. But as soon as we got the car, we decided it would be pretty cool because nobody drifts LS400s. Well, sorry, nobody. There's one or two people do it in the world that we know of, and that's about it. So we decided this was going to be a keeper.
The first thing we did when we got home was realise that this car had a lot more problems than we thought. Other than the rust and stuff like that, we realised that it overheated horribly. So we flushed the coolant system, or what was left of it. We got about 2 litres of gravy out. It didn't really look like water at all. And so once that had been done, the first thing anybody does with the V8, and we cut all the silencers off and put a side pipe on it.
2 silencers gone.
Should we start the car, see how it
3
sounds
to go.
now?
Sounds good already.
That's what you do.
It is.
Yep.
5 silencers is way too many.
No, that sounds better. Yeah, just a little bit. So it was now sounding very fruity with our side pipe, and it sounded like a proper V8 should. Happy days. So we decided we were going to do some drifting with this, because drifting looked like fun and we'd never done it before, in the UK anyway.
Yeah.
So the first thing you need to do is have a really tight rear differential. So we could go and spend 10 grand on some fancy drop-in, drop-out diff that all the BDC guys use. We took it out, we took it to our mates who has a big powerful industrial welder, and we just welded plates over the top of the gears. Job done.
Right.
We just ruined a perfectly good differential.
Ruined. We did it for scientific purposes.
Ruined. So for the price of a couple of beers, we had ourselves a welded diff. So we stuck that back in, and all of a sudden we've got ourselves a Drift LS400.
Our philosophy for this build was to keep it as cheap as possible and to do everything ourselves. So we did the first thing a drift car needs, and we bought the cheapest hydro handbrake off the internet we could find. Then we realised why it was so cheap and spent the next week machining the whole thing back to how it should be so all the threads actually worked.
So once we got the hydro handbrake threads and such like sorted, we deleted the ABS, which was just a case of literally throwing it away,
And here is our now useless ABS.
And we plumbed the hydro handbrake in.
It works. So it doesn't need to be any more movement than that. But anyway, that's all our brakes done.
That's it. We've now got welded diff, hydro handbrake, a V8 and open silencers.
Next was the service and the aircon delete. The aircon didn't work anyway, and the condenser was more of a block of Swiss cheese from corrosion than it really was a condenser. So that was in the bin swiftly to give us more room as well for our plans in the future. And then we did a service because we decided that we should probably change the oil and the filter and stuff like that and the fuel filter just in case.
Yeah, it wasn't too bad though.
No, it wasn't a bad job.
Yep, we got those done and we're almost at the point where we're getting the car ready. Go! Flat battery. It's just been conspired against us today. Right, let's put the battery on charge and pack up.
As soon as it's about to run on 8 cylinders again, the battery dies. That's been the story of today, hasn't it?
The devil once more vomits in our kettle today.
That is just explained today in one scene.
But there was one thing still wrong with it. It was sitting way too high on the standard suspension.
We could have spent a lot of money on some very fancy fully adjustable suspension and stuff like that, but we decided not to do that, and we just chopped the springs, reformed the ends so they actually worked properly, and gave it a go. What harm was there?
Well, it was pretty successful, I thought.
The car is lowered front and back, as you can see, by having no room in the wheel arches, and that's all our job's done.
Yeah, just in time because it's just started raining. So that was it. That got us to the point where we've got an LS400 that we could take drifting. So we did. So we took it up to a place up in Scotland called Driftland, and obviously we'd never drifted it before, and we stuck it on track there and spent the whole day with it cooking itself.
It wasn't that successful, no.
But it was, you know, from what we did, it was our first ever time out with the car. We didn't really know what we were doing with it.
Or with an automatic as well.
Yep, and you know, it went okay, but bar the overheating and such like. So we came back from that thinking this was fun, but we definitely need to sort more of the car out.
It was time we sorted out the overheating. After the gravy water and things like that, we knew it was going to be a problem. So we measured the hole that the radiator used to go in, and we bought the cheapest, biggest, new old stock 350Z thing off eBay. And obviously all the mounts were wrong because it was for a 350Z, but a bit of chopping and welding fixed that, and suddenly we had a nice, cheap aluminium radiator.
Yes, I got the fans as surplus stock. I think the fans were for an Evo 6 with the fans and shrouds or something. So we just chopped everything up and made it work, got it all wired in. That's it. Hopefully that was going to be the end of our cooling issues. But later on, it certainly was not.
No.
So at this point, obviously we've got an auto. So it was still running the standard auto box. We've got the hydro handbrake, side pipes, welded diff, chopped springs. We've got race radiator in the front. And there was plenty of people told us you cannot use a hydro handbrake with an auto gearbox.
Why not?
Well, that's the internet for you. Don't believe everything. So it was obviously working just fine. So we decided we were going to go to Teesside to one of the drift days there. And we were drifting very nicely. Things were going well. But we thought we'd put the Stig in.
The Stig. Not as good as the real Stig.
So we got the Stig out of storage. We put the Stig in the Lexus. And the Stig was doing okay. Until we had the tyre wall incident.
And your neck.
we got to do is just leave it in first, that's it. We had a great big tail whip. We piled backwards into the barriers so hard that I gave myself, well, I didn't give myself, I was sat as the passenger. I got whiplash for 3 months after that because it bent my head back. You okay?
Yeah, I'm alright. Sorry, Richard.
That's okay. Turn in. Power, power, power. Lots of power. You okay?
Yeah, I'm alright.
Yeah, I hit my head off the camera that was mounted on the roof of the car, and the crash was so hard it smashed all the dials on the dash. So we had to take it off the Stig after that.
Yeah.
That's why the Stig isn't allowed anything nice. But we did prove that you can drift an auto with a hydro handbrake and a V8. That was okay. We were pretty pleased with how the car ran.
After the Teesside Drift Day, we decided that this project was going to get a bit serious. And the first thing we thought was, this 3-speed automatic gearbox, the gear ratios are about a decade apart. So it was a bit rubbish for drifting. So we thought we'd fix that and just put a 6-speed manual in it. How hard can it be?
Easy.
These cars hadn't really been dabbled with too much. The 1UZ was still quite a new power plant in the terms of drifting, and the CDO series gearboxes hadn't really been played with either, so they were actually quite cheap still. So we managed to pick one of them up for cheap and decided we were just going to throw it in. A couple of days work, it'd be right.
So it was out with the measuring sticks and the CAD, and we CAD'd up an adapter plate that used the standard 350Z bell housing onto the LS400. We got those water jet profile cut out and then CNC'd it here for all the mounting holes and dowel holes. And those adapter plates, they came out quite well. I was pretty pleased with those.
Yeah, very nicely.
Yep. With that sorted, we needed to fit a clutch pedal, of course. So we used this Willwood pedal and we mounted that very nicely where the normal park brake would be. The master cylinder fitted just inside where the engine goes, and that meant we could pull the gearbox out. Gearbox is out. We then shortened the 350Z gear change so the gear stick would end up in exactly the right place when it was installed into the Lexus. So flywheel and clutch, what do you do about that? Well, we were going to use an AP clutch, but after I'd had a clutch on order for 3 months for them, and they still hadn't delivered it, I cancelled that, so that was pretty disappointing. So a bit more searching round, we managed to get, we selected an extreme clutch 200mm twin plate ceramic. It seemed to do the job, but unfortunately they will only sell their clutches including a flywheel kit. So we bought a Nissan RB kit, which gave us the pressure plate and ceramic plates and also the flywheel, but we didn't want to use the Nissan flywheel. The offset was wrong, bolt holes are wrong. So we thought, well, let's just buy a 20 kilo billet of steel and make our own.
Why not?
Why not? An awful lot of machining later, and what we came out with I thought was a really sweet flywheel.
Very nice shiny flywheel.
Yep, fitted the clutch perfectly, fitted the engine very nicely, everything was right. It was, you know, solid billet, everything was made properly with materials. And obviously we put it all together and everything just fitted perfect straight away. That never happens.
So we've test fitted the clutch and the flywheel onto the car and it all fits like a glove. Got the ring gear on it, all nice and squared up pretty much.
Well, we got that sorted out. That all went together pretty nicely. Made a good mount for the rear of the gearbox, nice and strong. The Nissan prop shaft we thought was going to be an absolute nightmare because it's carbon and we really wanted to use a carbon prop shaft, but we thought the prop shaft would be too long for the car. We put it in and it was too short. Happy days, but only by this much. So we made a simple adapter to go from the diff to the prop shaft, and that put that together, and we couldn't believe how easy the prop shaft went in. So that was good. We got the gearbox in, gear sticks in the right place, the right height, everything felt nice. We were very happy with that. 6-speed manual LS400.
Pretty new in the world of drifting, one of them.
Yes. So that was good. We were really pleased with how that went together.
After the Stig's epic crash, we decided that it was actually time to maybe put a bit of safety in the car, so we decided to put some proper seats and belts in it.
Yep.
Luckily, as you do, we had an old bride seat from Japan and a Momo steering wheel and a 4-point harness laying around from the old drift car in Japan.
Auto.
And then we got a 6-point SRT harness and a Cobra Monaco Pro seat, put that in the passenger seat, and finally we had a little bit of safety in the car.
Yep. Yeah, those seats went in really nicely. The steering wheel, we managed to get a Boss that had the correct splines. For that all went together well, and we were happy that at least we did a safety upgrade. So after spending a year working on the car, that was the first year of the project. 6-speed manual, LS400, drift car, seats, belts, suspension chopped, side pipe, race radiator, and it was running pretty well. But we didn't want to stop there. And it just so happened that Christmas was coming round. So, what do we buy with the Stig for Christmas?
A turbo.
Well, a turbo and intercooler, obviously. And just to add a bit more on there, we thought, well, why not a 50mm wastegate while we're at it?
I'm sure the cat does.
Let's see what the Stig's got.
Oh,
This is the Stig
right.
present.
The Stig's present.
Look at that!
What every girl needs.
Oh, I skate.
Right?
Doesn't everybody need a 50mm wastegate for Christmas?
Definitely.
This is for the Stig as well.
Oh wow.
Oh. Go
The
Stig.
Stig's been very, very
What
lucky.
could it
this
be?
week.
What could it be?
What could this be?
Well, you've obviously been a good Stig this year. It's a 3-inch intercooler piping kit!
Wow.
Complete with silicon.
And pipes and stuff.
Thanks.
And here's one for you, Leon.
Oh.
Look what Santa's brought you.
Oh, good.
What on earth could be in there? Let's have a look.
That says Borg Warner on it.
That looks like
A very big turbo.
that's an enormous.
Borg Warner S366.
Yeah, pop it on the table there. Yeah,
On the back.
that will be quite oily, so I wouldn't hold it to the biscuit. Look at that little fella.
Wow.
Look at that.
This is my present from the Stig.
Jesus.
An enormous.
That's not 100mm.
That's 100 by 300 by 600.
How is it? That's not 100mm.
Yep.
Is it?
So that was Christmas for us all. A 600 by 300 by 100 intercooler, Borg Warner S366 turbo, and a Turbo Smart 50mm wastegate. This looks like an awful lot more work, but an awful lot more fun.
First job on the Turbo 1UZ was to make some exhaust manifolds. So we used the spare engine that we had sat in the workshop, and we CAD'd up some flanges, got them all nicely laser cut, and we started doing some welding and some cutting. And so we made 2 log manifolds going forwards with a cross pipe across to mount the turbo on the front left of the engine, so we had enough room to get the dump pipe out and round and underneath the engine mounts.
It was an awful lot of thinking. A lot of thinking, and a lot of tea was drunk planning on how we were going to get all the pipe work in and still manage to do things like have engine mountings. But we did it. We got those manifolds done and they came out pretty well. And actually those manifolds we made like 2.5 years ago are still on the car today. So they've worked really well, but it was an awful lot of work making them. We made the log manifolds, but it was clear that the engine mountings were just too big. The standard ones are a big aluminium casting. So we thought we'll make some smaller ones and that'll give us some more room for pipes. So we took the standard engine mountings off and realised they were both broken. So they just came apart in 2 halves. The engine, all that time we've been drifting it over the last few months had just been laid in on the mounts. There was nothing holding it in.
It was just sat on the
except
subframe
pipes and cables.
and the gearbox.
So we made some nice new engine mountings. They were quite compact. They worked well. We had to replumb the power steering pipes on the right hand side because the standard power steering pipes are some crazy convoluted pipe work going backwards and forwards. So we junked all that. And the left hand side, that engine mounting tucked in nicely near the manifold, which would give us room for the dump pipe. And that was the next job. Rolling around in the snow in winter, making a 3.5-inch dump pipe from the front to the back.
Fun!
It was crazy to take it on, really.
But you did it.
That was one of those times where we really wished we had an indoor workshop and a ramp. But no, we got neither of those, so we were laid on the floor in the snow, welding up the dump pipe, 3.5-inch stainless all the way through. But what we did, we were pretty pleased with. That all came out pretty nicely. Yep, it all fitted in well. And that gave us our dump pipe. There we are. Turbo in.
Turbo's in. That was the hot side finished. Now it was for the cold side of the turbo. And we managed to make this very, very simple. The intercooler just fitted in front of the radiator after shaving bits off the headlights and stuff like that. It's millimetre in. And one silicon from the turbo to the intercooler. That was done. And then one pipe run, including the mass airflow meter, because we were still running the standard ECU, from the exit of the intercooler into the intake. And that was it. That was cold and hot done.
The cold side was surprisingly easy. We'd planned it ahead and everything just lined up and fitted. And the best thing is we were still keeping the sleeper look, which is what we were aiming for from the beginning with this. That gets us to the point where we have a 1UZ turbo. So we're still running the standard ECU, injectors, fuel pump, mass airflow meter at this point. And we are running wastegate spring pressure. We had a 7 psi spring in there, so there was no boost control. 1UZ turbo. Let's take it to the track and see what it does. And amazingly, we thought we were going to have a load of problems. We put it out on the track and it ran pretty well the whole day. Well, here we go, Leon. It's our first test. Put my window down a bit with Turbo Lexus, so let's go and do a couple of steady laps and see how things go.
Yeah, lovely.
We're just getting used to the fact that it now lets loose in third gear without any effort, as we found out as we piled through the tyre wall in front of all the spectators, and we sent tyres everywhere and we put a little dent in the back of it. Whoops.
So we ran it out on the track the whole day. 6-speed manual, turbo, 1UZ LS400. We're not sure how many of those exist in the world. I don't think there's many, and this might actually be the only one. So we're out on track, and we had great fun that day, and it was great to get some reward for all the work we'd put in putting the turbo on.
We did a couple of drift days with the turbo car and it was running great until that one fateful day at Teesside where we entered into South Bank and we lost all power and we had a death rattle.
Look at that. All those streaks in there. I think
It's our bearings.
It was clear that this engine was dead. So we did what any normal person would and we just put the eBay engine in. Swapped everything over, dumped it in the car, we changed the oil and water and we just ran it and hoped. We knew that the long-term plan for this car was to put an aftermarket ECU in it. So we decided to get ready for that. We would put a new fuel system in the back. So back onto eBay and a 2-litre surge tank and 2 Bosch 044 cheapo copies, something like that, later, and we had a new fuel system in the back and a actual really nice fuel pressure regulator. These new fuel system upgrades did show us that the in-tank pump was knackered, as we only had about 20 psi of fuel pressure running that pump. So we went on another cheap internet site and found a Warbro 255 copy and put that in instead, and that fixed all of our fueling issues.
with all our fuel system upgrades done, we knew that the standard injectors were probably going to be well close to their limits. And it so happens that RX8 injectors go straight in. They're the same fitment, same plug and everything on these. So we got hold of ourselves a set of cheapo RX8 injectors, 440cc ones, and it turned out they were okay actually. They just went straight in and they worked, and we were trusting that the oxygen sensors on the standard ECU would compensate for those, and it seemed to cope pretty well. So that was a good upgrade, and it was cheap. I mean, they were £8 each or something crazy, like 65 quid for a full set of injectors for the car, 440cc. So yeah, that worked well, and it stopped the plugs being a funny white colour.
It was time to actually sort something out about the suspension, because those chop springs were a bit bouncy and the shocks were absolutely knackered. So, at Teesside one day, a bloke walked up to us and said, "I've got a Supra with some BC Racing coilovers. Do you want to buy those coilovers?" We said, "Yeah, it's a Toyota. It'll fit, won't it?"
For the Mark III Supra, it goes straight onto the Lexus. They've got the same bolts, same spacing. Here's the adjuster, and if we look underneath here, they fit into the same yoke here with the same bolt. It's the same width, and we've even got them set at the same height as they were on the Supra.
Turns out, they actually did. Well, the fronts fitted perfectly, we didn't even have to adjust the height, and the rears, we needed a little adapter because they were a bit short. Other than that, they bolted straight on, which is crazy. We love Toyota.
This was it. We've got the fuel system in, we've got big injectors in, we've got the turbo in. It was time to commit fully to this project. So we looked around and we thought, what aftermarket ECU should we go for? There's a lot of, there's a lot of them around. There's a lot of choice. Everybody's got an opinion on the internet, so we ignore that. And we decided ourselves that probably Haltech was the most capable and user-friendly, and the help files, the software, the forums and such like are very good. So we decided to buy a Haltech. So we did. So we went for the Haltech Elite 2000, which gives us 8-cylinder full sequential injection and ignition. We didn't go for the 2500 because the extra cost of that to be able to run things like fly-by-wire throttle we couldn't justify because we've got a cable. And we bought the Haltech harness for it as well, to hopefully make the wiring easier, and we went for this big time. We made a wiring harness. Leon sat down, went through all the wiring diagrams, marked up the standard harness, and we amalgamated the standard harness into the Haltech harness, and we installed that. As part of doing that, it allows us to jump the standard coils, because we were finding that this was eating the standard coils. Running £7 a boost with one coil doing 4 plugs. They were just cooking all the time. So we junked those. We got ourselves some Toyota, I don't know, Corolla or Yaris or I don't know, some other thing coils. Thanks to Owen Atkinson for giving us some of those. So we could go coil on plug, and you make a little aluminium spacer and those coils go straight into the 1UZs. We bought the connectors cheap off the internet, and after an awful lot of wiring we had the Haltech installed and we could try and fire it up. Great news. And well, basically the base maps, we set up the triggering systems, got all that sorted out, and it was a pretty painless task actually, although it was a lot of wires, working our way through one system at a time. We got it fired up, and as soon as it's fired up you can start doing the adjustments. And I think we've got spark and I think we've got injector, so let's give it a go. So we were really pleased with how that went together, and basically all of that wiring we've never had any problems with since the day we did it. That's been really good. So yeah, big thumbs up for Haltech there.
With the new ECU, that gave us the capability to run more boost, which is always a good thing. But we didn't want to do that before we had some proper knock sensors installed. So we got some non-resonant Bosch donut type knock sensors and made a couple of little adapters, put them into the block, and that gave us a bit of peace of mind, so we weren't just winding boost into it waiting for it to knock.
The green trace and the blue trace are our 2 knock sensors, so well, that's good, we've got a signal from them both.
And also with that, with the Haltech, it allowed us to fix our dash by ripping it out and putting an IQ3 into it. So, ripped it out, the IQ3 plugged straight into the can of the Haltech, so that fixed that, and we also got the street version because we did fancy putting it back on the road at that point.
Yeah, that went pretty well. The only issue we had, or slight issue, is that the Race Pack IQ3 software is a lot older than the Haltech software, and it's nowhere near as user-friendly. So it took a little bit of messing around to get it programmed and calibrated correctly, but once we did, that was sorted. So all of a sudden we've got things like fuel gauge, temperature measurement, rev counter.
It was amazing.
And all these things that we've been missing for the last year since the Stig broke our other
Test
dash.
it, see what it looks like.
We'll start the car up to test it so it shows the revs and stuff. That looks amazing.
And that IQ3 dash went in, yeah, they're a nice dash, they go in easily, and minimal wiring because most of it's through the can. With that done, we were still drifting the car and using it, and it was running pretty well, but we had a niggling misfire, so it was time to sort that out. Part of the problem was that the plugs that were in it were still the ones that came in the engine when we bought it off eBay. So who knows what they were. So we treated it to a new set of plugs. Put the plugs in, we had to put a ratchet type handbrake in, and that gave us the opportunity to go and get it MOT'd, because with the dash and such like, we now had what we thought was a road legal drifter. Well, I'm back. Can you get an MOT on a drift car that was bought 2.5 years ago as an MOT failure? Pass. How about that? There's not even an advisory on it. So we did, and it passed.
Somehow.
Unbelievably. So, well, I mean, we thought the car was okay, but, you know, it's a bit of an outlier, that's for sure. So, we now had ourselves a road legal drifter. The insurance, you thought, oh, yeah, you're going to declare all the modifications. Well, we did. It's insured with an insurance company that specialises in motorsport cars that people have to drive to the track and back, which is pretty much where we use it. The only stipulation they gave is that the car must have a cage. And we didn't have a cage at that point. So in order to make the insurance valid, we had 7 days after getting the MOT to build a cage. So that was the point where you buy a bunch of tube, get on the pipe bender, get the measuring stick and the welder out,
build
A week
cage.
later, we've got a roll cage. So there we are. The car's MOT'd, it's taxed, it's insured, all the modifications are declared to the insurance company, and therefore we are fully road legal with our drifter. Happy days.
The first problem we found out with driving it on the road is that the standard UCF10 brakes are hopeless. They did not stop at all. It was quite scary actually. So we decided to do what any person would do and not buy a £1,000 Willwood brake set, and we bought some 20 quid for the pair or something like that super rotors off eBay, which are 28mm thick and a bit bigger, we don't really know, and bolted them on. The standard calipers still fit with a little bit of spacer to get the width out, and suddenly we had some stopping power.
And obviously at this point we're running the Haltech with a boost controller, which means that we can play around with the boost levels as well. We've still got the engine that we got off eBay, so that's running standard everything. So we decided that we'd take it out on the road and turn it up. And that's exactly what we did. Unfortunately, by doing that, we found the limit of the standard head gaskets pretty quickly. And it turns out that at about 14 psi the standard head gaskets are just fine. At 18 psi they most certainly are not. So that was the end of that. So unfortunately we blew the head gaskets, and at the time the only ones we could get hold of were slightly thinner 40 thou Cometics. So we took the standard gaskets out and we put the 10.5 to 1 compression ratio Cometics in, say because it was all we could get.
With these new Cometic head gaskets in, we were comfortably running 18 psi boost in the car. That was around about 500 horsepower and 800 newton meters of torque, somewhere in that ballpark. And all that did was expose the next problem in the system, which was the infamous third gear of a CDO anything 350Z gearbox.
Yes, not only were the synchros getting very crunchy, third gear didn't work anymore. So having broken our original gearbox, I managed to pick up another one, and we thought, okay, we'll put that in and it'll give us some time to fix the other one properly. So we put that gearbox in, we went to the drift day, and I can't remember if it was the first or the second lap, but anyway, it made a funny bang noise, and then third gear stopped working on that one as well. How strange. So what do you do in that situation? Well, we could have gone home, but we decided that would be boring, so we ran the car in fourth gear for the rest of the day. And realised that fourth gear is very expensive on tyres.
Scary.
But at 18 psi the car will pull fourth gear no problem. Happy days. And we did some of our best smokiest ever drifts at that point on that day. Well, again, so we've got two broken 350Z gearboxes now, and what do? We could go and spend 10 grand on a sequential box, we could go and spend £2,000 or £3,000 on another gear set for it, but that's not how we roll. So we decided we're going to fix it ourselves. So we took the broken third gear, and it's the braze joint that breaks on it, and we designed and manufactured our own hardened and toughened rings. We reground the gears and the synchro hub to be able to take those, and we got them electron beam welded. And that gear that we got made and we fitted like a year or a year and a half ago now, that gear is still in the car today, and it has never been out from the day we fitted it. So that has worked perfectly, and we think we're the only people, as far as we know, we're the only people anywhere in the world who've remanufactured the standard 350Z gears and made it work and hang together with the sort of power that we're putting through it. So we've been really happy with that fix.
At this point the car was running great, but with the faster the car got, the more G's we pulled in the corners, the more oil surge we got. And it transpired again that we ran another set of big ends. This time it was a bit worse than last time because we actually heat cracked this crank. Thank you to Owen Atkinson for providing us another crank, and it was time to build another engine because we now had two engines with no bearings in them.
So we decided to rebuild that engine using trapdoor baffles in the sump to see if we could cure the oil surge using those. So we put a new set of big ends in, changed the crank, and put the trapdoor sump on, and it made things better, but it didn't fully cure it. We still weren't 100% right on what we were doing with the oil surge on it, and it seems 1UZs are quite notorious. Any sort of oil surge, they run the big ends straight away.
At this point we'd been running 18 psi for quite a while in the car, and we decided it was time to unleash the full potential of the 1UZ. We couldn't do this with the 10.5:1 compression head gaskets, so we decided it was time to build another engine. In this engine, we used ACR race bearings, a trapdoor baffled sump, 8.5:1 compression with 100 thou Cometic gaskets and skim pistons, ARP studs, and I think that was about it actually. It was quite a strong engine other than that, and it was time to pop that in. We built this engine to make a point. You don't need a full billet race engine to make big power. In this engine we reused the stock crank, stock rods, stock pistons, stock blocks, stock heads. We reused the rod bolts, we reused the main cap bolts, we reused the main caps and the rod caps. All of it is done to what needs to be done, not what has to be done for money.
So the question is, 1,000 horsepower engine for £1,000. Can it be done? Well, here's the numbers. The engine was scrapped because it had run a big end, and 2 of the rods were damaged and the crank was scrap. So the engine was free.
In order to run big power and more boost, we knew the 440cc injectors, they were running at 95% duty. We knew that from the Haltech, so we couldn't go any bigger. So we needed some bigger injectors. Now, we thought about 850cc, 800 to 850cc would be right for the kind of power we wanted to run. And, well, we had a few options. You know, we could go to Deech Works. I think they're about £100 each for injectors that'll do that. But as with everything else on the build, that's not how we roll. So we ended up with, I think, about 30 Toyota Corolla 850cc injectors for about £8 each. And we built our own flow matching rig for injectors, and basically spent a day flow matching the entire set, and we ended up with two matched sets from that. So 850cc injectors, and we installed those into the engine because we thought they're going to give us what we need. With the Haltech, we actually matched every single injector to each cylinder that it went in, and that should give us plenty of headroom that we're looking for. Whilst we were doing that, we also made the door bars because that would allow us to twin when we were drifting, because that seemed like a good cage upgrade. And in order to belt and braces, we didn't want to damage the 1,000 horsepower engine that we'd built. We pushed the boat out and we bought an AccuSump, and we put the AccuSump in because we thought hopefully that'll be the end of all of our oil surge issues. And sure enough, that thing has run perfectly. The oil pressure and everything else is absolutely dead stable drifting now. Been very happy with that. So with those injectors installed, AccuSump door bars done, we were quite happily drifting around 18-20 psi, but we now had a lot more potential. We've got the turbo that'll do it, the boost controller, the ECU, the injectors, the fuel pumps and everything else. You cannot road map this car with that much boost because basically it wheel spins in 4th gear in the dry, and we can't do it on the track because you can't get fast enough to do it. So we bit the bullet and we went to the dyno. We booked a day down at John Sleeth, down south, Doncaster. We put the car on it. I'm not sure John had seen anything quite like this before, but it was going to be very interesting to see how it went. And obviously this is the first time we were going to turn it up. Our intention was to go to the dyno and keep turning it up until it either went bang or we ran out of something. The great news is the thing we ran out of was boost, because at 29 psi that's as high as the Haltech onboard boost sensor will go. So we turned it up gradually through the day, you know, 400, 500, 600. We got over, I think it was 623 horsepower. We were running at the end of the day, and we were running nearly 1100 newton meters of torque. We think that was pretty impressive for an engine that we built for next to nothing, and a car that was built you know, on the driveway as me and Leon doing it. It was time to get it back out on track and be able to turn it up to 11. Anyway, pretty tidy lap here, and we certainly mashed the tyres on the last corner. That's it, there's plenty of smoke there. Not bad for knackered old road tyres. Into the last section, dropping into fourth here, and give it some big pain on the way out and see what smoke we get. I think it was pretty impressive. The Brurald MX-5 certainly got fumigated.
We had the 29 psi 650 brake horse LS400, and we decided to take it to the drag strip just for a bit of fun, and that's what's turned into the Father Son challenge, which is 1-1 right now, so I'm going to get him next time.
But there's no way he was going to get through that finish beam in front of Lenny the Lexus. Internal combustion power wins every time. Look at that. See ya. $60 to 120 record, 6.8 seconds. 125.94, new ET record, new fastest speed record.
I was only 0.1 off.
And you're buying tea.
And we first realised that we had no grip at all. The rear wheels, after lowering it, had about 2 degrees of negative camber on them. That doesn't work because we were just running the inside edge of the tyres off the whole time. So we decided it was time to make some suspension links. We made new adjustable toe arms and camber arms for the rear wheels and dialed all of the toe and the camber out of them. And we also got some very nice ultralight ATEC 2 wheels, which are 9.5 inch rear, so we can run 265 semi-slick tyres. And that fixed all of our grip issues. We decided it was time to get a little bit of publicity for this car because we'd been doing YouTube for a while and the subscriber count was going up a little bit. I organised a meet-up with Jamie from Officially Gas to get this car reviewed on a big channel. We had a great day with Jamie down in Luton.
So controlled though, you see what I mean? Just, oh mate. It's mad, as I say, it feels like we're in Mad Max. It's just ridiculous. Alright, let's get it. Jesus Christ. This is mad. And it just puts the power down.
He loved the car, he's a great guy. He loved the fact that this was a built car, not a car that's been bought from parts.
I love it. So you.
It just tipped us over that subscriber edge, and it was a great day. It was wonderful to spend our time there, and it was just something different to do.
The car's running great on the drag strip. It's running great on the drift track. We're enjoying it on the road and such like, but there's still a little niggle that when we're drifting, it still gets too hot. It's fine otherwise. So we decided our latest project, which brings us up to date to where we are today, was to sort out the heating issues. So the best way we thought to fix that was to move the radiator from the engine bay, where there's an awful lot of heat and a lack of airflow, and we'll put the radiator in the boot. So we ran the pipes all the way through under the car, replumbed the system, put the radiator here, mounted our fans underneath in an aluminium box, and that draws air through the car. So after days of cutting and welding and fiddling, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 pipe. So we hope this works. We haven't tested it on the track yet. Everything's okay as far as we can test it here. And that's going to be our next thing. That brings us to where we are. So thank you very much for watching. We hope that quick run through has given everybody an idea of where the car was and where it started and where it is today. We've built all of this ourselves. It's all been done on the gravel driveway. It's all been done by us two. The only people that have really helped us, we should say a quick thank you to Owen and Ian Atkinson. They've been a great help. They live local to here, so with advice and information, parts, bits and pieces. the Flemings and the Mansbridges and the Sargents in Australia for things like seals, bearings and Haltech bits and pieces that are very difficult to get over here in the UK. And other than that, you know, family with bits and pieces, Christmas presents.
Christmas presents.
Stig.
Stig. Yes, thanks to the Stig.
Yep.
For crushing it.
And that's it. We've done the entire car on a budget. We think it's a bit of a monster. It's something unique. That's where we are. Please subscribe, and we hope you enjoy seeing what we're doing. If you want to know more detail about anything that we've talked about, you can watch the full detail videos. They're all there on YouTube. 40 parts currently. Other than that, please look after yourselves, subscribe, share, and we hope we'll see you out on track again soon.